Coming up on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we look at the regular secondary and how they look post-spring. We also look at Theo Akwuba, recent transfer from Louisiana to Ole Miss. That should be interesting. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. I want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications of new videos when they go up, which actually happens quite frequently around here. And, of course, upvote the video itself. We'd appreciate it. Also, bonus content. If we get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers before the start of football season, which we are going to do, if you look at the number, we're over 81% there. We will do a post-game live show during football season. Immediately after the ball game, we will go on the air, talk to Ole Miss legends, talk to high school coaches. We're going to have different people coming in and out. Some days it'll just be me because that is going to be cool. But it'll have a chat that is over here where you can have your say of what's going on. We're going to do about 30 minutes, not to take up too much of your time, but we'll do that. It's called Post Game Live, and if we hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, we will do that. So subscribe to YouTube if you haven't already, and of course, tell a friend and get them to subscribe. And the sooner we get to 1,000, the better. So we need to talk a little bit about the rest of the secondary, the normal umbrella secondary. That is the corners, the safeties, the free safety, the strong safety, the ones that you think of normally when you think of safeties and cornerbacks and the secondary. These are the positions that you normally think about. Now, there is a lot of shuffling around that they do. They want everybody to be fairly cross-trained, and that is just so you can't say, okay, Otis Reese is lined up back there. They're probably in this type of defense, because over the course of 6 months or a year, you would be able to figure that out. You would be able to see that. It would be a major tell with the defense. So they want people to be cross-trained on all the positions. A position one time will be played by Otis Reese. The next time, Tashim Johnson is going to do it. The next time, there might be Davison Igbinosun. Stuff like that. They're playing the same defense, but different players are playing different positions. So they're starting to cross-train and do that. Now, we do not have Tashim Johnson. That slows us down a little bit. He was the transfer in from Iowa State. He was the cover of our thumbnail yesterday. He won't play until the fall. He had a broken jaw in the spring and was unable to practice. Ladarius Tennyson, he's going to get a lot of playing time. Otis Reese is going to get a lot of playing time. Tashim Johnson is going to get a lot of playing time. Now, if you do the math there, that's 4 different players, and I haven't even said A.J. Finley yet. So that shows you a little bit of the depth that we have on the back end of our defense. And man, we better, because it's half of our defense is our defensive backs. And those 4 safeties might be the most important players on the field, even quarterback. Take them out of consideration. Those 4 safeties and their ability to rotate and all that is going to make this defense successful. We talked about how important the box safeties were yesterday. Now we are going to talk a little bit about how on the back end, with those box safeties and everything going on, you have a chance to be pretty special, honestly. We haven't even got to the cornerbacks. We're going to get to the cornerbacks in the next segment. We're going to talk about them kind of separately, even though we're putting all the secondary together. So this segment, we're going to talk just about the safeties, and specifically the strong safety and the free safety. A.J. Finley has consistently improved over his time at Ole Miss and has turned into quite a pretty good football player. When he was a freshman and sophomore, he kind of shied away from contact, it seemed like at times. He might not have. That's just the way it came across. But as he has matured and gone forward, he has become a physical player at a free safety, and he's got the length and the athleticism to play it quite well. Whenever they do the defense playing offense, offense playing defense fun thing at the end of practice, A.J. Finley is usually the quarterback. That shows you how athletic he is. But he's a super athletic guy. Much like Davison Igbinosun, we're going to talk about him now, even though we're going to talk about him mainly next segment. But he has the athleticism to feature at free safety. I think that might be where his future is. But right now they're trying to get him on the field because we have so many guys that kind of fit the bill of what we're doing. Now, Tysheem Johnson, we'll talk about this tomorrow. Maybe a leader in the clubhouse to return punts. He's a super athlete. He's a Honey Badger-esque defensive back. Now, as a true freshman, it didn't necessarily show out, although he made plays and started for most of the season. I expect him to make a jump. And last year he was predominantly a box safety. I think this year he will have stuff back further and play some strong safety, even some free safety, because he has the skill set to do that. And his athleticism moving all over the field, you're going to see them develop, and this is not a mistaking term, they're going to find a Jabril Peppers way of using him all over. He doesn't necessarily play corner, but on those 4 safety spots, you're going to see him pop up all over because his athleticism is so good. I expect him to make a jump in year 2. Otis Reese, the leader of that defense, real physical dude. He was a born box safety, born strong safety. I don't think we're going to see him too much at free safety, although he has the skill set where he can actually do it. He was a former maybe top 60 pick in the country when he signed with Georgia out of high school. He's come here and he's just simply been a physical player that is cemented himself in the defensive backfield and is a large part of that turnaround. Ladarius Tennyson, a super physical run stopper. You probably don't want to play him too often. You can get away with a play or two, but you want him near the line of scrimmage. He's definitely got the skill set of a Jake Springer, a super physical run defender, where you're running a 3-2-6, but essentially it's a 3-3-5, and this guy's playing the outside backer. That's what he does. He's always near the line of scrimmage, and because of that, you can rush him, you can attack the run, you can squeeze down, and because of that, he becomes a more effective player. He also has the athleticism to cover backs and tight ends and potentially slot receivers from time to time. So I'm pretty impressed with the spring that he had. He helped himself out quite a bit this spring. The secondary, by the way, the grade I'm going to give the overall secondary is an A. There's talent all over the field, period. There's no way to get around it. And they added to that with Davison Igbinosun. We'll talk about him next segment. But when you look at these safeties and what they can do, and the way they can rotate and the way they can be used, they're going to be a nightmare for quarterbacks because players are sometimes landmarks for calls. If you see this player at 7 yards, call this. If you see this player back at 12, call this. And it's kind of like a 1-2 easy read type situation. Well, when you have 4 safeties that can interchange and line up all over the field, it's going to be incredibly hard for the quarterback. He's going to have to know what's going on. You might call the same defense every play, but those 4 safeties are lining up in different positions, and all of a sudden it looks like a different defense. And that's going to be hard on the quarterback. And I think that is Chris Partridge's idea of what he wants to do. When Michigan was really good, they were doing stuff like that a little bit as well. Lining up Jabril Peppers all over the place and maximizing their defense that way. So it's going to be quite impressive to see. It's going to be interesting with these safeties moving around and interchanging. And whenever you look at the Ole Miss defense, you know, that middle part, the spine of it, the nose guard, the 2 linebackers, the 2 deep safeties, that is the key. Everybody talks about soccer and everything, the spine of a team, the center backs, the center midfielders, and the striker needs to be strong in there. The same thing happens for football too. You want to be strong up the middle because the quickest way for them to score a touchdown is a straight line. So you want to be put together in the middle of the field, and this team kind of is. So I look forward to that. But in the next segment, when we come back, we're going to talk about the cornerbacks specifically. And I'm going to butcher some names, but we're going to talk about what they do and how they have a chance to be a strength, especially their length and their athleticism. So stick around. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Just give us a 5-star review. We don't care what you say. You can say Steve's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It gets so tedious when he starts talking about scheme. Any of that stuff, you can put all of that down. Just rate and review us at 5-star. That will help others find the podcast in the future. So thank you very much for that. Now, in the first segment, we talked about the safeties and interchanging and all that stuff, and I started getting off in the weeds a little bit, and I'm sorry about that, but it's fun to me. So the second segment, we're going to talk about the corners, and really specifically like Miles Battle and Davison Igbinosun. Those are the two guys that really made a stand out. They have a backup in Deantre Prince. I think MJ Daniels is in that list as well, and along with Marcavius. Can't remember his last name all of a sudden. Marcavius. I'll just say Marcavius. He's number 28. I know all of that. I just forgot his last name for a second. But those guys at the corner provide a good bit of depth, and you see the way this roster has been transformed over the last couple of years, and their use of the transfer portal to do it. And I talk about this over and over again. We went to the Sugar Bowl with 17 players rated 4-star or higher coming out of high school. We are now at 32, 33, 34, somewhere around there, depending on the service that you prescribe to, but players that really kind of showed out. And because of that, there's a little bit of depth in front of them. There's not so much going to be asked of them. And you have a chance to do things that are a little bit special. Now, with the RPOs and the advent of the RPOs, the thing that people don't really understand or recognize or do whatever is the outside of the field has become less important. I realized back in 1988 or 1998 or even 2008, if you had a young quarterback, you did not want him throwing over the middle of the field. So you saw a bunch of out-breaking routes and things like that. Even Peyton Manning, when he came in for Tennessee against UCLA, it was all stuff outside the hash mark. And that's just the way football was played. There's not as many bodies in there. But with the RPO, the conflict players are immediately going to be the inside because that's where most of the players are. So you have to throw across the middle of the field. Linebacker does it. You throw behind him, in front of him, or you hand the ball off, and that's the way these modern offenses run. So the outside has lost its importance, even on the defensive side of the ball, because the offense doesn't use it as much. Now, I say that to say this. They still are hyper important. They're like the U.S. goalkeeper when they are playing El Salvador. You might have to come up big 1 or 2 times a game, but you're back there to come up big 1 or 2 times a game. The whole game may be on the other side of the field, but the one opportunity they have, we're going to need you. That's what it's like playing a modern cornerback in a college football offense, because so much happens over the middle of the field. It's no real mistake that Jameson Williams at Alabama took off as a slot receiver. Jalen Waddle took off as a slot receiver. Slade Bolden wasn't quite what they wanted or expected, but it took off as a slot receiver, and there wasn't much on the outside. If you look at the national championship game, after Jameson Williams got hurt for Alabama, their wide receiving core just kind of was left wanting. Nobody was prepared really to set up because the 2 slot receivers that played all the time was Slade Bolden and Jameson Williams. Those guys didn't really change. It was the outside receivers you expected to step up, but they didn't, because most everything's an RPO and they're using the middle of the field. They're using these guys. So you kind of can create your own prison a little bit by doing this, but that's the reason offensively we do a little bit different things. We set up the 90% of the offense is this RPO system that we constantly run. We're going to hand the ball to Zach Evans. we're going to throw the ball to Jordan Watkins or J.J. Henry, whoever's out there, Jalen Knox, or Michael Trigg. And it's all going to be in the middle of the field, and it's all going to be in the RPO family. But 10% of the offense are what we call Lane Kiffin shot plays. And it's basically designed to do double moves and catch people sleeping. We're going to lull them to sleep with 90% inside, doing all this RPO stuff, and then we're going to double move and catch them and get them safeties whenever they start coming up to have to deal with these guys. All of a sudden, these outside guys might be on an island and susceptible to double move. And just like Arkansas last year with Braylon Sanders, you have a receiver running wide open. That's why we do this. It's done for a reason. Everybody thinks we just run a methodical offense and what we do, but everything is just a set plan where 90% of it's here, but we're always paying attention to what's going on out there, because when it's time to call a shot play, we're going to have a guy wide open, and you see it happen all the time. It's also why it's important that our quarterbacks are very good deep ball throwers, because our 2 or 3 shots a game, they're 7-pointers. They're designed to be wide open. You saw something on the outside, you beat them with a double move. You have to hit that pass. You can't overthrow it like we saw in the spring game from time to time. So our corners on the outside, though, I'm very happy with. Miles Battle and Deantre Prince. Those are veterans. They've played a ton of football. Davison Igbinosun got an interception in the spring game, much like Tysheem Johnson last year. He's a super athlete. He's a guy with Tysheem that has a chance to do some pretty special things in the secondary. But I think as a true freshman, they're going to put him at corner because they're going to use his athleticism, and that's the best way to get the most out of him. It's not anything against him. It's just it's going to be easier for him to do that. And all of a sudden you have depth. You probably will have a defense to where Deantre Prince, Miles Battle, and Davison Igbinosun are on the field at the same time. If it's a 3rd and 15, you might have one on a slot receiver or something like that. But the specialization that this defense can do is actually quite impressive. I mean, it really is. And I'm pretty excited to see that and what's going on and everything with this team. Anyway, BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's Run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I haven't seen BetOnline's betting line, what's going on, but on one of the betting services, Ole Miss is 20-1 to win the SEC, 3rd in the conference. So that tells you where our talent is at the moment. So when we come back, we will get on to the hardwood. We haven't talked Kermit Davis and the basketball team in a while, but we're going to talk about them. They got a big transfer. And we're just going to mosey on and think out loud about what's going on with basketball season, because there's a little bit of a nugget that's put in, because I'll tell you why in just a second. Anyway, come on back. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Do us a favor, sign up to the YouTube channel. Once we get 1,000 subscribers, we will be doing what we call Post-Game Live, an interactive post-game show, about a half hour, with Ole Miss legends, high school football coaches, and we're going to talk about the game and break it down as best we can. So tune in for that. So I know we're heavy football on this show, and I always tell you that the Ole Miss fan base is about 80% football only. So there's going to be football on every show that we do throughout the year. Some people might not want to hear football, but that's just the case of what it is. Whenever we do a football for the thumbnail, it has 5-6 times the number of views than when we do a basketball thumbnail. Those are basic analytics and what's going on. Now remember, we're not necessarily pandering to the 10,000 subscribers that are on the on threes and things like that. We're going after the 55,000 in the stadium other fans. There's a whole bunch of people that do not subscribe to anything. They will not pay for Ole Miss information. We are broadcasting for them. So, Ole Miss got a commitment from, I think his name is Theo Akwuba. Theo Akwuba from Louisiana Lafayette. He transferred to Ole Miss. He averages 9.7 rebounds and 2 blocks per game this past season. He was the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. His 68 blocks ranked 8th nationally, and his 3.7 offensive rebounds were 10th. So it's pretty easy to see why Ole Miss is bringing this guy in. He's going to be the rim protector. You know, the thing about analytics that's going on in college basketball, the thing they shoot is threes and layups. That's the thing. So you need a rim protector, and you need to guard well on the perimeter. You need perimeter guards. You need to be on it. But if they get past it, you need to know that your rim is protected. And it looks like this guy will be able to do that. On the offensive glass, he's also going to do a lot of work. Now remember this team. I think everybody forgets about what this team was or what this team is or anything like that. Deshaun Ruffin is going to be the alpha of this team. Matt Morrell is better when Deshaun Ruffin is on the floor. He averaging 5 more points a game when he's playing. That was proven last season. He's going to make a jump. Jamin Brakefield, I think he is going to make a jump. He played a good bit of basketball this year, and he's pretty good near the basket. They're going to have to find people to fill in to everything because the last 2 classes are over half of their team. So you might see a James White. You might see the couple of these new signees that they have gotten. Let's see, I'm going to bring them up, who they signed, because they signed a pretty good class as well. But they signed T.J. Caldwell. Malik Ewan is the gem of this class. He's 81st in the country. 97 is T.J. Caldwell. He's a guard, 6'4", out of Texas. Number 98 is Omri Abram, another guard. All these guys are like 6'4" and above. I mean, they're big guys. Another 4-star signee is Robert Coward. He's a 6'5" guard. Then you get the Jackson State graduate transfer of Javius McInnes. He's a 6'7" forward out of Brandon. Loyola New Orleans transfer, Miles and Burns. He's 6'6", 210. These are the scrappy guys that are just going to do a ton of the dirty work. And you'll just see how this team kind of gets put together and what they do. And you can see the build. You can see the idea. I mean, now, the kid from Loyola, New Orleans, that's an NAIA school. So it's a little different than playing in the SEC. The kid from Jackson State's the SWAC school. It's a little different than playing in the SEC. So anytime you transfer up, even the kid from Louisiana, it could be a bust. The potential for bust is there. But I'm not saying that any will. I think all of these guys have a potential to be successful. But you see guys like Robert Allen. You see guys like Malik Ewan at 6'10", 220. You see guys like Theo Akwuba transferring in. And there's some size on this team. They're going to be able to put a starting 5 out there that is Deshaun Ruffin, who on a good day is 5'10". Let's just be honest about that. But he's also the best player on the team. But after that, every player might be 6'5" and above. Could be a problem. You know, there's some length there. They can defend. And Kermit Davis wants to defend. He wants to defense first, get the offense out there. But I think they're fairly athletic, and I want to see what they look like. I'm going to be honest. I'm completely excited about this basketball team. Now, there are people that have put nuggets down there because of last season. And like I said, we got ate up by injuries last year. Lost 4 games in overtime. Everything that could go wrong did. So if you look at things that like karma or the basketball gods, Ole Miss is due. Ole Miss is due to have some players work out because of last season. Because nothing went right last year. Not a single thing. And Kermit kept his job because of that. Now, the reason they're going to do that is because sites like On3 and Rivals and 24/7, they play the fear game. Okay? They want their subscribers to be scared of what's going on. So they're going to call whenever something goes wrong, immediately for firing. That's just a reflex. Those message boards are the most toxic places on the planet. They're even more toxic than Twitter or Facebook. But that toxicity is what starts the narrative that starts going around the fan base about a coach needs to be fired. Now, Mike Bianco, they're talking about this is going to be his last year. This is the example of that. He has been to 3 straight super regionals. He interviewed with LSU last year. People are pissed off about it, and they're using that as an excuse to move on, just like they did David Cutcliffe in 2004. Now, David Cutcliffe, we ended up with Ed Orgeron. Now, who are we going to end up this time? I do not know. They better hope that they handle this right and can get the guys that are assumed to take the job. Because if it gets past them, all of a sudden it could get downgradable really easy. Like, I don't know how they do it, but just as somebody that watches the game, that somebody is a fan, and just understanding how this goes and how this has went, I am worried about the other side. Because there are several people in this fan base, several people that are just like, fire the guy, the rest will take care of itself. No, you have to have a plan for the hire. If you don't have a plan for the hire, you don't need to fire a coach. Because that can go really, really wrong, and you end up in that hire and fire cycle every 3 years where systems change and everything else, and you just can't get out of it. So just be careful. Understand that, and I don't know if we need to be doing this with Kermit yet. I think we need to see next year, everybody points out like NCAA tournament or bust. That is a silly, absolutely stupid philosophy. Because Ole Miss basketball invests at a level that is probably 13th or 14th in the SEC. And I just don't know. If you want Ole Miss to compete in basketball, donate in basketball. Handle the NIL for that. But the NIL stuff is almost all football at this point. And it's intentionally all football at this point. And that tells you, it's like, okay, they want to have a basketball team. They have one of the best arenas in the Southeastern Conference, but they don't want to have it necessarily at the level of everybody else. Not at the expense of football. Because let's be real, Ole Miss is a poorer school whenever the grand scheme of things in the SEC conference sits. There's not enough money to go around. You have to be specific. If Ole Miss wants to compete in football, they are going to have to load up on football. But as we saw from the fan base and everything else, 80% of the fan base is football only. So that's why they're doing that. But basketball-wise, I think the standard needs to meet the investment. That's all I'm saying there. I mean, Kermit could be fine and whatever. He could do whatever. But it should meet the investment. So we'll see how it goes. I think everything will be fine with basketball. I think they have a chance to be fairly good. But remember, Deshaun Ruffin is going to be about 8 or 9 months off of an ACL surgery, which is usually about an 18-month recovery. So he might not be the same guy. He might. I mean, he's a super athlete, super quick, but he might not. And just take that into consideration. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we will hit the specialists. We'll talk cruise missiles on this show. Tomorrow's episode will be the highest watched episode ever because we're going to be talking kickers and returners and things like that. So now make your second listen your Locked On SEC show. Get all of your daily SEC news in less than 30 minutes with SEC expert Chris Gordy. It's free and wherever you get your podcast. You can see it, get it, or listen to it. Do it now. I'm on that show actually fairly frequently. I have a good time on there with Chris as well. Also coming up next week, we're going to have an NIL discussion with the Locked On Tennessee site. We're going to go back and forth. They're doing NIL. We're doing transfer portal. We're probably going to talk for about 15 minutes of what's going on about that. So stay tuned for that as well. We've got a lot of stuff going on, but until then, tune in and, of course, peace.